Some kings didn't just kill their enemies, they made them wish they'd never been born. Not out of rage, not out of madness, out of pure, cold calculation. There were methods so disturbing that even the soldiers carrying them out couldn't sleep after. Methods that weren't just about ending a life. They were about destroying everything around it. The family, the legacy, the memory. And the worst part? These kings were considered great, celebrated, written into history as heroes. So what exactly were they capable of? And why did the world choose to look away? Before we get into any of this, you need to understand something about power in the ancient world. There were no courts, no appeals, no outside laws holding anyone accountable. A king's word wasn't just law, it was reality. And when someone crossed that reality, the response wasn't just punishment, it was theater. Take Persia around 500 BC. The Achaemenid Empire stretched across 3 continents, millions of people, dozens of cultures, all held together by one thing: fear. Not fear of armies, not fear of taxes, fear of what happened to the ones who said no. The executions weren't hidden, they were public, they were long, and they were built to be remembered. Darius the Great had 3,000 people crucified outside the walls of Babylon after a rebellion, not killed in battle, crucified, put on display, left there as a reminder of what defiance cost. And Darius wasn't remembered as a monster, he was remembered as one of the greatest rulers in human history. That's the part worth sitting with. This wasn't rage, this wasn't madness, this was governance. The cruelty wasn't separate from their power. In many cases, it was the reason for it, and what comes next goes even deeper. Because some of what these kings used wasn't just brutal. It was thought through in the most disturbing way possible. Methods that took days, sometimes weeks, built not just to kill, but to take a person apart completely. And once you hear them, you'll understand why even experienced historians pause when writing about this. Let's start with Scaphism, ancient Persia. This one doesn't leave you. When the Persians captured someone they wanted to make an example of, they didn't just execute them. They had a process. The prisoner was forced between 2 boats, one fitted on top of the other, with holes cut out for the head, hands, and feet. Then they force-fed him milk and honey until his body gave out, and then they poured more on his exposed skin, and they left him on a stagnant pond. In the sun, the insects came, and they didn't stop. Days passed, the body became something no one wants to describe, but here's what made it worse. The method was built so the victim stayed alive through all of it. Accounts from Greek historian Plutarch describe victims surviving up to 2 weeks. Now moved to imperial China. Lingchi, known in the West as death by 1,000 cuts. It wasn't just an execution, it was a ritual, done in public. The point wasn't speed, it was the opposite. Each cut followed a specific order. The crowd watched, because the watching was part of it. It was used in China from around the 10th century all the way until 1905, when it was finally abolished. But neither of these is the most disturbing thing historians have found. Because some rulers figured out something that changed the whole picture, that destroying the body was almost merciful compared to what came before it. And that's exactly where this goes next. The method that genuinely unsettled historians wasn't physical at all. It came from the Ottoman Empire, and it went after something far more fragile than the body. Certain sultans had a practice for dealing with political threats inside the royal family. Brothers, cousins, anyone who could one day challenge the throne. They weren't always killed. Instead, they were placed in a section of the Topkapi Palace, called the Kafes. The cage, a sealed area with no windows to the outside world, no contact with anyone except a handful of mute servants, no news, no purpose, no future. This wasn't a rumor. Ottoman court records and accounts from historians like Leslie Pierce confirm it. Some men lived inside the cafes for 30, 40 years, and when they came out, if they ever did, they weren't the same people. They'd lost language, lost the ability to function around other people. Sultan Ibrahim I, who came out of the cafes in 1640 after years of isolation, showed clear signs of psychological collapse. He ruled one of the most powerful empires in the world while being unable to process the reality around him. Think about that. The most powerful throne in the world, given to someone that same throne had already taken apart. That's not just cruelty, that's something colder. It's the use of time and silence as weapons against the mind. And it worked. Every time, the body heals. But what these rulers understood, and what psychology has since confirmed, is that isolation doesn't just hurt a person, it changes who they are at a fundamental level. And once you understand that, power starts to look very different. Here's what stays with you after all of this. None of these methods were accidents. None of them were emotional. Every single one had a purpose behind it, a message, a calculation. And that's the part that doesn't go away. It's easy to look at ancient rulers and call them monsters. It puts distance between then and now. But the instinct behind all of this, the need to control, to silence, to make an example, that didn't disappear. It just changed form. The Kafes didn't vanish. Solitary confinement exists in prisons today, right now, and modern psychology has confirmed what Ottoman sultans understood centuries ago. Isolation rewrites the human mind. We just gave it a clinical name and called it standard procedure. The public executions built to keep populations in line, the logic behind them still shows up in how power operates around the world. None of this is easy to sit with. It shouldn't be. Because the real question isn't how ancient kings were capable of this. The real question is, what does it mean that we still recognize the logic? That somewhere we understand exactly why it worked? That's not a question about them. That's a question about us. If this made you think, share it with someone. And if you want more stories that most people never get told, you already know where to find them.